We have an update on the latest about AEW's TV negotiations with Warner Brothers Discovery that has many fans saying that this could be horrible news for All Elite Wrestling and its founder, Tony Khan. I'm going to tell you what the update is, a number that was thrown around in negotiations. All of that, much more coming up in this video. We're also going to be talking about some pretty big contract updates from WWE and why many talent have their contracts coming up so soon. All of that, much more coming up right here. YouTube.com/Real Take Wrestling. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let's dive right in and talk about AEW's TV deal. As we know, they have been negotiating with Warner Brothers Discovery for a while now. The exclusivity window is reported by Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter to expire later this summer. And what that means is essentially when you sign one of these big TV contracts, you have to give the current company, in this case Warner Brothers Discovery, if you're AEW, an exclusivity window where they're the only person who is allowed to negotiate with you. After that window expires, then you can shop your TV show to other companies. So hypothetically, if later this summer that exclusivity window expires, they are allowed to go over and negotiate with Fox. They are allowed to go over, negotiate with ESPN, FX, whoever it may be, and try to get a bigger offer, which they can either leverage against the Warner Brothers Discovery offer if they indeed do not like it, or they can take that offer if it is indeed more and better for their company. Like, that is kind of what is at stake as far as this exclusivity window that you're going to hear a lot about, especially if negotiations don't wrap up soon. And the one thing to remember before we talk about the actual number that is being reported out there is that these are ongoing negotiations. When you have ongoing negotiations, the companies are incentivized to either save as much money as possible, in the case of Warner Brothers Discovery, or with AEW, ask for as much as possible, because that is the position they should be taking from a business standpoint. Warner Brothers wants to be able to get as much value out of every dollar they spend on All Elite Wrestling television. AEW wants to get as much value out of each hour of AEW they produce. That's how this business game works, and that is important to remember. These negotiations are always ongoing. These are always like hot button issues, and they're never set in stone once you hear a number. So that's why I just want to give a big disclaimer there. This number will change. But according to this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, according to Dave Meltzer, who wrote this week, quote, "The figures being talked about are said to be considerably more than the estimated $110 million per year, or slightly more. That would in theory take the company to a profitable range." Now, that $110 million number per year would be a massive, massive, massive increase into what AEW is getting paid at this moment for their TV deal, like $110 million over, let's say, 5 years, because that's usually the window that people talk about these things in. 110 over 5 years, that winds up being right around $550 million over 5 years. People have spoke, and that would probably be for television and the actual live streaming of events, premium events, potentially pay-per-views. We don't know exactly how that's being fit in there. Obviously, like, more information needs to come out about what exactly these negotiations are on. I believe that we are still kind of figuring that out. As of right now, AEW in their current deal is getting paid $175 million over 4 years. So 550 over 5 compared to what they're getting paid now is a monumental increase, to say the least. I do not think that 110 is going to be the final number. I believe that at the end of the day, we are going to see AEW probably get somewhere closer to 800 mil. My prediction has always been right around 800 to a billion over 5 years for everything. I believe that winds up being somewhere between 160 million to 200 million per year. And this, in theory, this prediction would be for everything. This would be for the live TV show Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage, although I think expect some of those to change times and days. I would not keep Rampage on at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, even though that is going to do considerably more than whatever you're going to put in place there. The reality is you could probably be getting more value out of that from a business standpoint by putting it on another night. Rampage on a Thursday night would be hella profitable, if you ask me. And, it would be a little bit more current and recent than other shows. I know Tony's always said he doesn't want to go against the NFL, but reality is that you'd only be going against them about, what is it for Thursday Night Football? They do like 14 games because they don't even do the games like the last few weeks of the season, like 14, 15 games. That's fine. That's fine. You can eat it for 14 weeks and have Rampage be a bit of a more important show on Thursday nights. Or, and again, we're talking about it here, move Collision off Saturdays into Thursday. Do it live on Thursday, and then you can do even Rampage on Friday night right before SmackDown is probably a number. I haven't really paid close attention to the Rampage numbers as of recently because I know they have been doing that with the 6:30 p.m. Rampage Eastern time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I think expect some of these to move because I do think that there is more value in a weekly 2-hour-long show like Collision than just having it on a Saturday, like where the ratings are going to be what they are, 400 to 500,000 per episode. That is the expectation, really. Like on a Saturday night, that is decent ratings, if you ask me. Other thing to talk about, because Tony Khan has mentioned this before, the potential for 3 hours of live television blocks. So we have seen AEW and Warner Brothers kind of experiment with this a little bit with the NBA playoffs going on. They had Rampage, go along with both Dynamite and Collision over the past few months. And what we've seen is major increase in numbers for Rampage. And those blocks tend to do better. I think one thing that does hinder them a bit is the fact that they are, essentially just branded as something different. And if people see that Rampage logo, like the Dynamite logo change to Rampage, they're going to automatically assume in their heads, like, oh, it's less important, right? Because the perception is Rampage is a less important show. That's just the reality. Whether or not people want to admit it, it's a whole different thing, but that's the truth. Personally, I love some of the stuff they do on Rampage. I love, like some of the dopest matches AEW does on a weekly basis are on Rampage, but it is a very missable show because it doesn't progress too many stories, if we're being honest. So I think look for that to potentially happen. They might end up like just canning Rampage completely, making Collision 3 hours. I would not be a fan of that because I am a big believer that, well, for two reasons. Number one, I'm a big believer that 3-hour blocks of television for live wrestling weekly do not work. I don't think you can do that weekly. Every now and then you can do it. It can be a special thing and it would be meaningful. It would make the show feel special. Like I have no problem with Grand Slam being a 3-hour-long show. I have no problem with, the Winter is Coming shows, like those special Dynamites they do. I have no problem with those being 3 hours long. You want to make it feel like a pay-per-view, make it feel like a pay-per-view, make it fun, make it like a very special thing. I think over time, you're going to see some fans drop off, especially that last hour. That last hour would be not great for AEW. And I know Raw is doing what they're doing, but they're Raw, all right? Let's be honest here. Now, on the flip side, right, the other reason is that AEW, one of their problems lately has been a lack of focus, if we're being honest, in storytelling. And you've seen things go all over the place. We've heard reports that things are a bit chaotic backstage, although the degree to that is varying. I'm not sure how much adding another hour of live television weekly helps that. I know they're already producing 5 hours anyway, so maybe it wouldn't make too much of a difference. But when you want to make things more meaningful, I think this could hinder that. On the flip side of that, though, that you could do more in theory and be able to tell more stories and give more people time on television. I'm just not sure how many people are going to keep up with that over time. That is really the thing. And one of the things that made AEW feel special, along with the fact that it was a fresh, new product that was booked well, that was, that had so much buzz about it at a time where WWE was in the can as far as booking goes. One of the things that made that show feel special was you only got 2 hours a week. Like, that is a big factor in why AEW felt special, why they drew so well when they came out of the pandemic, and why ratings were so good for so long. Because if you wanted your fill of AEW, you had to tune in Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. to get your fill. And then this is before Rampage. This is before Collision, obviously. And when you add Collision, when you add Rampage, on the live viewership, you're kind of splitting your audience because it's like, okay, well, there's Collision on Saturday. I probably can't watch tonight. I'm not going to make it a must-watch thing. And then you also kind of split your gate a little bit because you have now 2 touring shows per week in Collision and Dynamite. So you're splitting your houses. You're hitting more towns. That's why I think this Arlington thing that Collision is doing coming up is a big deal. Like, they should be doing that to try to take Collision off of touring, make the focus on Rampage Dynamite. So many shows, Tony Khan. Make the focus on Dynamite, and then, come back to touring slowly. And I wouldn't mind seeing, more of this from AEW, like, as far as Collision goes. Like, especially if you're getting paid. Like, they are getting paid, reportedly, for this Arlington thing. So, to me, that's a win-win. You're already getting paid some amount of money to host Collision over a number of weeks at the esports arena over there in Arlington, Texas. That's fine. That is a good business move in my view. So we'll see what happens, but I still expect these negotiations to be ongoing. Remember, the $110 million number, that's going to go up and down. For all we know, that could have been a preliminary number that Warner Brothers was starting with, and it could go up from there. We'll see what happens. At the end of the day, I think it's worth saying that it is in both companies' interests to get a deal done as soon as possible. For Warner Brothers, you don't want AEW to have the chance to possibly get a better deal, which would make you and force you to up your potential offer. And for AEW, it is a risk. It is a bit of a risk going out and trying to pitch your show to other companies because you're not sure how other companies are going to feel. Like, wrestling is hot. There's more wrestling on television now than I think there ever has been. But at the same time, it's important to remember that there are still companies that view wrestling as a bit of a sideshow. So we'll see what happens there. It is obviously going to be an interesting turn of events over the next number of weeks to see if AEW can indeed get a TV deal done. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comments as we move on to our next topic, WWE contracts. So, WWE have a few deals that are expiring. Reported by Fightful, we know that Chad Gable's contract is expected to expire this week. Same deal with Ricochet as far as his contract expiring. That's going to be later this summer. But we know Becky Lynch is gone from the company as of right now. She's reported to be taking a bit of a break from wrestling. I would expect her to get a massive contract, and I would expect her as well to at least ponder the idea of either re-signing with WWE or AEW, because there is no way that Becky Lynch right now is not getting offers to be the highest paid women's wrestler in wrestling history. Adjust it for inflation all you want. I think that that is facts, because with AEW, you have a situation where if they do sign this TV deal, I would expect them to be insanely aggressive in trying to get Becky Lynch. Like, make an insane offer, because right now the annual revenue for AEW with this current deal with Warner Brothers is somewhere around $45 million per year, not including Collision, I should say. And they've already been reportedly aggressive in trying to get talent. If they are able to land that $150 million number that I talked about earlier per year, their budget for talent goes up. And they could make an insane offer. NBA money. We know the Bucks got NBA money. We know Kenny got NBA money. That was the quote that was floated around there when they re-signed. I think we could see the same potentially for Becky Lynch. Now, it's TBD. Becky is not expected to leave for AEW anytime soon. She's not expected to even come back to WWE anytime soon. She's taking a break. But many people expect her to be back in the fold in WWE eventually. But, we've seen this recurring trend. And then this is why I wanted to talk about this. There's been this recurring trend in WWE as of late to sign people later than usual. Because back a few years ago when AEW first started, we saw WWE signing people like a year, 2 years out of their deal as a way to keep them from AEW. And it was not like, they weren't just signing up major talent. It was like they were signing up like Maria and Mike Canales. They were signing up, many people across the board to these big deals, these big contracts. And it got to a point where eventually during the pandemic, they ended up letting a lot of them go. But the main reason that they signed these people and re-signed them in the first place was to keep them from going to AEW, because that's what they viewed. They viewed AEW, who at that point was a fresh commodity, had a lot of buzz, a lot of interest, was doing well in the ratings, was competing with Raw as far as the key demos. Some weeks even beating Raw was Dynamite in the key demos. And it was perceived to be a better place to be. It was perceived to be fresh. It was perceived to be creatively satisfying. It was perceived to be better than WWE. And that a lot of that is due to Vince McMahon, because the culture and the way he ran things in WWE was obviously a problem in multiple different ways, but creatively it was very unsatisfying for people. It was not a great place to be. And that's why you saw all those talent leave when their contracts did indeed come up. The tide has definitely shifted with the Triple H era, for sure. Like Triple H, with WWE, it is the bigger company. It is more creatively satisfying now than it ever has been, you could argue. And on top of all of that, you have the potential to be a bigger star in WWE. That is true. It is going to be interesting to see, though, and like this is why this contract stuff is really fascinating. Is WWE's strategy of waiting, because it used to be they would sign these people up way before their contract's up, but we are seeing people like Damian Priest, who's the world champion, Drew McIntyre, who was recently the world champion, Dominic Mysterio, who's a prominent character, Seth frickin' Rollins, and Finn Balor, all of whose contracts were reportedly up fairly soon before they started negotiating. And even Becky Lynch, as far back as Mania, said that she was not engaged with contract talks yet with WWE. Her contract expired last week. We are seeing WWE wait longer and longer to negotiate these deals. I am not sure how smart that is, even if you don't believe AEW is competition. Like that is fine. And you feel like you can get these people anyway. I still don't think that waiting until the last minute is a good strategy, because why would you risk it? Why would you risk people who you know are stars in your company, who you know are contributors, like Chad Gable and Ricochet, who I have to the right of my screen? Why would you risk it? Because at the end of the day, if their contract's up, and once that offer comes in from another company and it's more than what you offered, they're going to think about it. Even if you're the bigger company, they're going to think about it. You never know exactly what people's motivations are in life. And especially when they have families, especially when they have, other priorities. Sometimes, like, the money's there, And I'm not sure how, soon WWE want to do. I'm not sure how, this strategy is working for them, but it seems to be, obviously. They are WWE. But I do see it as a bit of a problem. We'll see what happens with some of these contracts. I mentioned Becky, Chad Gable, Ricochet. I believe there are other contracts that are set to expire, so we'll see what happens there. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about WWE's strategy with these contracts? Are they waiting too long to sign these deals? Are they not waiting long enough? Let me know in the comments section. Also, be sure to smash that like button if you haven't already done so. Subscribe. and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.